I am sending an alarm, a big warning, and it's not just about Germany, it is about what is to come. The results of the Germany election, if anything, could be a precursor to what happens to other countries in Europe going forward. The conservatives have won in Germany, but more importantly, the far right party in Germany has made significant gains. We are going to go ahead and dive into these election results here. Everyone, you got to pay attention to what's happening around the world.
Well, nearly 60 million Germans have headed to the polls over the weekend for this national snap election after the centre-left government led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz collapsed last December. The exit polls are in and they show that the opposition Conservatives have won the election, putting leader Friedrich Merz on track to become the next Chancellor. But the far-right Alternative for Deutschland party looks set to become the second biggest force in the German parliament. The exit polls show it's doubled its share of the vote from the last election. The AfD party ran a campaign on anti-immigration, trying to capitalise on a spate of recent deadly attacks we've seen in Germany by asylum seekers. Here's the party's leader, Alice Weidel.
Yeah.
So this is the AfD party. This is the far right party in Germany that has made significant gains this time around. So they have doubled their support. And I think this is important for people to see. You need to understand what's happening here. Number one, Germany has the largest economy in Europe. So Germany can easily set the tone. Notice the reporter there said that they ran on an immigration platform. Does that sound somewhat familiar of what we had happen here in the United States? There were a number of people that came out to support Donald Trump because they were against the migrant issue. They were not happy with the way that Kamala and Biden were handling the immigration situation. So what happened is people swing all the way over to the other direction. The pendulum does swing. So we saw that happen here in the United States, and now we see that happening in Germany as well. This is what I've been trying to sound the alarm about. When the current leadership that is in power, if they do not take charge and really listen to what their voters want, and it doesn't necessarily have to be immigration, but whatever issue is important to you, if they don't do that, typically what tends to happen is that people swing in the other direction. We saw that happen with Donald Trump, and you're seeing that happen in Germany. Let's continue.
We have achieved a historic result. We have never been stronger in the federal government. We have become the second strongest force as Alternative for Germany, and we have now firmly established ourselves as a people's party.
Germany is Europe's biggest economy, so this result is likely to have big implications across the continent. And it follows a recent shift towards the far right in countries like Austria and France. The Conservatives won't form a government in their own right. They will need to form a coalition. We don't know if that will be with another party or two parties, but they've already said that they will rule out working with the AfD party because it's too dangerous. But this result is likely to set the stage for protracted talks.
So people have to understand in Germany, they do have more political parties that we do, or they have more viable political parties than we do here in the United States. I would love to have something like what Germany has, how they have like all of these different parties. And I'll show you what that looks like here so you guys can see that. A guide here to their political parties. Again, like, I wish we had something like this. They have the CSU, which is the Christian Democratic Union, right? And these are the guys who won big here. So Friedrich Merz, we'll get into who he is and where he actually came from. You need to know some things about Friedrich. Okay. All right. So they have that party, which is obviously conservative party. They also have let me bring this up here, the SPD, the Social Democratic Party, as you can see there. And that's self-explanatory, you guys. All right. They also have the Green Party, just like we have the Green Party here in the US. Their Green Party gets more support. And it's because the way their system is set up is different, right? So theirs does receive more support than the Green Party here in the United States. And then there is also this party I was telling you about, the AfD, the far right party, which has now really, again, doubled in support. And what you'll notice here, under these parties, it says who their preferred coalition partner is. So with the Green Party, their preferred coalition party is that SPD party, right? The Social Democrat Party. And then, but that's the one, the AFD party. This is the party that you really need to keep an eye on. There's also the Free Democratic Party, which is the FDP. That is a neoliberal pro-free market party. So again, as you guys can see, we'll have to go through all this because I'm going to show you in just a second on the video, but they have multiple parties, the BSW. Sarah, Glenn Greenwald interviewed her via translator. So she had quite a bit to say about the Ukraine war. She was heavily against that. Another one here as well. Mainly former Left Party and former AFD supporters, mainly in Eastern Germany. So let's go ahead and go through this breakdown a little bit so you guys can see what this means for Germany and what it could possibly mean for Europe as well.
Since the election, the opinion polls had the CDU on about 30%, the AFD on about 20%, the SPD on 15%, the Greens on 12%, the Left on 7%, and both the BSW and the FDP just under 5%, which is the threshold for representation in the German parliament. This meant that a lot would depend on whether or not these two parties made it to the 5% threshold, as if they didn't, the CDU and the SPD would probably be able to form a two-party grand coalition. But if they did, they'd probably win enough seats to force the CDU and SPD to find a third coalition partner. In the end, the polls were broadly correct. The CDU finished first with 28.5% of the vote, a roughly 4 percentage point increase from their 2021 results, meaning its leader, Friedrich Merz, will likely be Germany's next chancellor.
So notice what they showed you there. There was a 4% increase for this conservative party from 2021. So again, we are seeing similarities there. What we saw here happen in the United States, we're seeing similarities happen there in Germany, where the Conservative Party increased their support in 2025. Let's continue.
Next up in second were the AFD with 20.8%. And while this was a few points less than some pre-election polls had been predicting, it was still the party's highest ever result and double what they got in 2021.
Again, the AFD, this is that far right party. So in 2021, you can see they had a little bit over 10%. And now you see in 2025, they're almost at actually a little bit over that 20% there. So the message that I'm trying to send to people is this. I want people to pay attention to what's really happening here. People are moving further to the right. And I tried to sound the alarm about this, that if you don't meet the needs of what the people want, even in this country, if you're not helping out the people, if you're not meeting the needs of the American people, whether it's economic needs, which tends to be everyone's number one, people tend to go in the other direction, or they stay home. What did we notice about the election here in 2024? A lot of people stayed home. When you compare those numbers to 2020, a lot of people said, no, this economy is like horrible. I don't want to participate in this at all. If you look at the 2020 presidential election, a lot of those people that came out to vote for Joe Biden, it's not like they loved Joe Biden. That was a vote against the current administration at that point in time, which was Donald Trump. So that was a vote against him. They swung in the other direction. I had coworkers that voted for Trump in 2016 that turned around and voted for Biden in 2020. And a lot of that had to do with some of his actions like the Muslim ban, but also the way he handled the pandemic. Then we fast forward to 2024 and you see similarities where people were really upset with the Biden administration this time around and people swung in the other direction. And you just have this pendulum that just swings back and forth. This is what happens when you don't meet the needs for the everyday people. And I think eventually what is going to happen is that eventually it's going to get to the point where I think more people are out in the streets. Because I think, and I hope I'm correct with this, I think what I'm seeing from particularly people here in the US is that more people are starting to see that both these parties really are not looking out for working class interests. And I think the more and more people that see that, more and more people will start to break away. I think we're close to the breaking point. I don't think we're there just yet. A little bit more here on how these results played out.
There was also a stark regional divide here, with the AfD winning the most second votes, i.e. party list votes, in most constituencies in the east, apart from Berlin, neighbouring Potsdam and Leipzig, and the CDU winning most in the west. Support for the AfD was also higher among voters with a basic education.
So what you're seeing is the unification is not there anymore. Let's go back to the split here of Germany.
Constituencies in the east, apart from Berlin, neighbouring Potsdam and Leipzig, and the CDU winning most in the west.
So once again, it appears that Germany is divided. It appears that East Germany and West Germany are divided yet again. Now, I remember once upon a time, there was a Berlin Wall. I saw the Berlin Wall in person. I was very, very little, but I saw it in person. And when that wall came down, the idea is that East and West Germany would unite. There were people that had relatives on one side of the wall that they hadn't seen in years because they were separated by a wall. Now it appears that that unification is no longer happening. If this is true, what this map is showing you, that unification between East and West Germany doesn't seem to be there anymore. And it seems like the split is happening again. A little bit more here.
Support for the AfD was also higher among voters with a basic education, who are twice as likely to vote for the AfD as those with a higher education. Moving on, the SPD came third with 16.4%, their worst result at a federal election since 1887. Scholz took responsibility for this, calling it a bitter result and a defeat, but also took aim at the AfD and said, "We live in a democratic country and we're fighting for democracy. That an extreme right party like the AfD can get results like this in Germany is not something we can just forget about."
Do you hear a similarity there where he says we are fighting for a democracy? Does that sound familiar to you? Don't you hear people saying that, politicians saying that here in the United States, we're fighting for a democracy? How is it that a Donald Trump figure could have won again? There's a disconnect here with the people. These politicians are just completely disconnected from the people. And I think the response that you see with the far right party in Germany, that increase, I think that says a lot. The fact that the SPD decreased when compared to 2021, you can see there's a decline here, and there's an increase. There's a decline between the SPD and an increase between the AfD. People are going in a different direction. So the winner here of the CDU, Frederic, I want to tell you where this guy comes from. Because everybody's like, Frederic. Let's talk about Frederic, shall we? Let's talk about Merz. Who is Frederic Merz, the man on course to take Germany's top job after election? Let's go into it. That's him. I don't want to go into his whole life story, but there are just a couple of things that I do want to show you about him. And that is where he came from. We're not going to get into the whole rivalry and all that stuff. This part right here. Merz turned his back on active politics for several years after leaving the parliament in 2009. He practiced law and headed the supervisory board of investment manager BlackRock's German branch. Pause. Right here. There you go. That's who this guy is. He headed, it's not like he was a part, he headed it. He headed the supervisory board of investment manager BlackRock's German branch. That's who Merz is. So you have someone from BlackRock now in charge. And his party will have to build a coalition with another party. But the reality is, yikes. Now, why is that important? Donald Trump says he wants to end this war in Ukraine. BlackRock doesn't want the war to end in Ukraine. I'm sure Mertz doesn't want the war to end in Ukraine. Most of these NATO countries don't want that war to end in Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen. So you see, pay attention to this because this could explain some things later on. And it says during that break, he often traveled for business to the United States and China, though he never lived outside Germany. So that's what's happening there with Germany, ladies and gentlemen. And I told you, always look at these people, man. You always have to look up the information and see where are they coming from. It reminds me of France. Why am I forgetting his name? Macron? What's his name? Why do I forget his name? Anyway, it reminds me of Macron. It reminds me of Macron because Macron was an investment banker. We literally have banks entering politics. Now, I don't live in Germany, and I'm sure most of you watching don't live in Germany, but we're talking about the largest economy here. And that guy just won. And that makes me wonder if that is going to put a wrinkle in Trump's plans here to try to fully end that war in Ukraine. I don't know. We'll have to sit back and watch. But something to keep an eye on. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.